Let me tell you about the wildest and most exhausting past 48 hours of my life. So 2 days ago, I had a French class in the morning. So I went there and around 9 a.m. I had the flashing in my vision again, and it intensified into the point where I couldn't see everything in front of me, but it lasted less than 30 minutes. So I was decently worried, but not too worried. And then I had a headache, so I cancelled my internship for later that day and I went home and I just slept. And I felt better when I woke up. And I also had a class in the evening that day, so I just went to the evening class and came back and I was feeling okay. So the next day around 凌晨, like I don't know how to say it, like around 3 in the morning, my head woke me up because it was so painful and it was like throbbing on one side. So it took me a while to fall back asleep because my head hurt so much. And then for 2 hours, starting from 10 o'clock, I had a lecture. So I biked to the school and I had to leave early in the lecture because my headache came back and I felt like it was kind of serious. So I turned to my friend who was sitting next to me. I was like, I think I should probably go to the emergency room because I don't know how bad this is. So then I climbed the 8 flights of stairs to get to the school administration, and they helped me call a number that's not an ambulance, but like the national French number for medical inquiries. And basically that number suggested that I go to a hospital called Hôpital Jacques Monod. But then to get there, I had to take a train and then walk a bit as far as I knew. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. Like I feel pretty normal. Like I can still walk in a straight line. I had an umbrella because it was raining. So I was like, okay, I'll make my way there by myself. So I bought a ticket at the train station, got on to what I thought was the right train, and then on the train, and this is why I love when women, around 4 other women, helped me with further directions to get to the hospital. And they were like, you took the wrong train, and also you shouldn't have taken a train because after getting off at this stop, you need to take a bus to then get to the hospital. So at this point, it was like already 1. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. So I got off and then I waited at the bus station for like 40 minutes and then the bus didn't come. And at that point, I was thirsty, I was hungry, I was a bit cold. So I was like, I'm probably making my situation worse by being so physically tired and standing out in the cold. So I decided to cut my losses and went back to the train station, bought another ticket back to Le Havre. And then when I got home, I was just so tired. I made some lunch and then I tried to sleep again. That didn't work because 1, I felt cold. Like even though I knew I had enough blankets on me, I just felt cold. And 2, my mind was just awake and with anxious energy even though I was physically so tired. Because in my head I was catastrophizing everything but also rationalizing it at the same time. Like I was preparing myself for the worst possible outcome and telling myself like, okay, here's what I'll do and here's how I'll be fine even when this happens. So I was like, okay, so if I have another stroke in France, like my family is not here, they're on a different continent, so I'll probably be hospitalized here and then I'll have to drop out of school and then somehow make it back to China, and then maybe then my mom and I will go to Australia and then maybe I'll enroll in a university there that's closer to home. But anyway, that was what I was thinking in that time that I was trying to fall asleep but couldn't. At around 6 p.m. I went down to talk to my landlady, who was thankfully in the house because she's usually away. I was like, hey, can you drive me to the emergency room? I'm not feeling so great. So she did, and thankfully she has medical experience. So on the drive there, she was asking me about you know, the medications I take, the medical history that I have, and all of that. So she helped me explain that very clearly to the emergency room staff. And so my information was registered, and I got to the waiting room, and I just had to wait because, believe it or not, but this French public hospital that I was in was on a strike. So there weren't enough working medical staff, and so everyone in the waiting room had to wait hours and hours. So I sat there, I felt kind of sorry for myself, felt very lonely because I was completely alone. My lady went back because it was cold and it was raining, and she's old, but she still drove me here. After a while, I figured might as well do something with my time while I'm here because I was feeling a bit better. I brought my computer and all my chargers. I pulled out my short story and I got to editing it, and I finished editing it maybe 1 hour later, and I sent that version to some of my friends. So it was like at 10 in the evening, I was receiving messages from a friend who was awake because she lives on the west coast of the United States, and she was sending me all these messages, hyping me up about, you know, the things I wrote. So that was nice. It made me feel less alone. Eventually, I got to see the inside of the emergency room. I did some physical tests. They took blood tests. They also did a scan of my head, which I think was neither a CT nor an MRI because they didn't inject me with anything, and I didn't hear the noises of an MRI. If you know, you know. Just a lot of the time was just spent waiting. I was waiting on a chair inside the emergency room, and then they gave me a room with a hospital bed. And then at a certain point, I held my jacket and I just lay down on the hospital bed. I was just waiting. This doctor just barged in and he was like, "We need to do a COVID test." And he got 2 cotton swabs and poked so deep into my nose that I think he touched my brain. And then at around 1:30 a.m. they were like, the results came out, it's all clear, nothing too serious has happened, and they prescribed me some tests to do outside of the hospital in my own time, and then also some pain medication, and then I was free to go. So then at around 2 a.m. I arrived home, and now it's like 9 a.m. and I woke up. Hopefully my sleep schedule isn't too fucked. I would say this experience, and especially the time spent waiting like for the train, and then at the bus station, and then in the waiting room, and then in the emergency room, and then like in the hospital room, all this waiting just made me feel so completely alone because my family was all not just not in the city I lived in, but in a different continent with like a 9-hour time difference. You know, my friends were unable to visit me as well. Also, I just want to admit that I'm such a... does the term exist for girls? Like a mama's boy, but for girls, like a mama's daughter? Because, you know, the whole time I was fighting with myself about who do I contact, who do I tell about this, because if I tell them, I would feel less alone, but I would also be burdening them with, you know, the knowledge that I was not doing okay. But I still told my mom, and despite the 9-hour time difference, she stayed awake. And all the hours that I was in the emergency room, and all the hours that I couldn't be contacted because I was, you know, I was moved to another room with no cell signal. She stayed awake all that time to reassure me and make sure I was doing okay, you know, doing the best she can because she was so far away, and I'm really grateful for that. I reminded myself of two things. One, that this will pass as well. I just had to wait out the hours and then it will pass. And the second thing I reminded myself was I was doing my best. And sometimes doing your best is just curling up on a hospital bed and waiting. And sometimes that's enough. I guess crisis averted this time. And for what it's worth, I got to experience another country's medical emergency system and came out on the other side alive. So that's something. The more you know.